Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Right Call. My name is Cole Altman, and I'm here with my co-star, Mark Altman. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm good now that you called me a co-star. I mean,
Of
I,
course.
I thought I was a co-host, but if you're going to elevate me to co-star, I'm all over that.
I mean, I would refer to you as Jayson Tatum, but that would just be a co-player.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful, Cole. I mean, boy, and we're going to get into this on the podcast. You know what, Cole? Basically, you open the door. Let's get right into it, actually. And we've been talking. We've done several podcasts now on the disappointment of the Boston Celtics, and I want to take a couple of different angles on that today. And I want to first talk about what Cole just said is Jayson Tatum. And, people tend to elevate people to a star level status so quick now in sports. And if you watch Jayson Tatum, his game is actually quite limited. He is a great outside shooter. I mean, hits some impossible threes at times. But he very often becomes selfish and relies on isolation. He takes high degree of difficulty shots at times. I mean, Cole, how often do we watch a Celtics game where we'll see the other team have so many easy looks, and then it seems like when the Celtics are on offense, they're taking difficult contested shots. So my thing on Jayson Tatum is, does he have the ceiling to be better than he is now? I think he does. I'm not saying he's capped at his age where he's at, but he's not a consistent inside player. He is not a great finisher around the hoop. He's an average finisher, and he disappears for chunks of time during games pretty consistently. So Cole, when it comes to Jayson Tatum, where do you think he's at, and where do you think he can get to?
Well, I think the sky's the limit if he can improve. Excuse me. I think sky's the limit if he can improve his inside game. I think his outside shooting is where it needs to be. He's a great outside shooter, as you said, but he needs to start driving more because he's a big physical presence. He's 6'10", and if you're 6'10", you need to be a big physical presence inside. He's athletic. He's got to shoot. He can shoot. He's fast. So if he can develop his inside game, I think sky's the limit for Jayson Tatum.
So, Cole, I did some research before the show today, going back to the 2018-19 Celtics season, comparing it to last year and then comparing it to this year. And I want to just go over something. In the 18-19 season, the Celtics had Al Horford, Kyrie Irving, Marcus Morris, Terry Rozier, and even Aaron Baines, who made some contributions that year. But those four guys, Baines aside, who are no longer on the roster. Now, I think you could ask most people in the NBA, if you were to add right now Horford, Irving, Marcus Morris, and Terry Rozier to this roster, I think they'd probably be the favorite to win the championship. But here's the problem. At the end of the 18-19 season, Cole, Kyrie Irving had a decision to make, and so did Al Horford. And Kyrie Irving is looking at the current Celtics roster, and he has to be thinking two budding stars in Brown and Tatum, a good supporting cast, Hayward, a third quasi-star, but yet Kyrie wanted to leave. And Kyrie, we felt, was a cancer that season. He divided the locker room. He was selfish. Yet now, we must ask ourselves, maybe Kyrie knew something. And frankly, maybe Al Horford knew something. Because Horford was offered a similar contract to stay with the Celtics than go to the 76ers, but he wanted to leave also. So did we underestimate? Did we miss something, Cole? Did Irving and Horford know something back then that we're now finding out about this Celtics coaching and roster?
Well, my guess is that they didn't realize something about the coaching. They realized something about Tatum and Brown. I think that both those players want to win championships, and I think within practices and games, they may have realized that Tatum and Brown are both selfish players that want the ball all the time. And I don't think Irving liked that. Irving loves having the ball. Irving loves scoring. So does Horford. Horford needs to feel like he's making an impact. And I think both players, and I know this is jumping forward a little bit, but even Gordon Hayward may have realized that, and that's why they could have left.
Well, in the case of Kyrie, Cole, I agree. I think that's a great point by you. Do I think Kyrie, part of the reason he left is because he wasn't going to get as many touches in this offense? Yeah, I agree. I think that was a piece of it. In the case of Horford, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Horford didn't need to score a lot of points. That wasn't who Horford. Matter of fact, Horford was like Garnett, where he could go a couple of quarters and never take a shot. I don't think he would have minded all that much. So in Horford's case, I think it's a little different. But in Kyrie's case, I think you're right. And in Hayward's case, Hayward has come out this year. A lot of Celtics fans have been frustrated that Hayward's gone to Charlotte and made such an impact. But Hayward was critical of how he was used in Boston. And what that translates to is Hayward wanted more touches, and Hayward also needed the ball. And when Irving, Hayward, Brown, Tatum, and even a guy like Terry Rozier, those 5 players are all ball-first players. And you just had too much redundancy around the type of player and the selfishness level and needing an amount of touches per game. And I think that's been the problem back since 18-19. And now Kemba comes, and he's the same thing. Kemba needs a lot of touches, so it hasn't really fixed the problem.
Are we sure we want to listen to Hayward's judgment? I mean, that mustache. That mustache. Like, why are we listening to his judgment?
You know, I think it's pretty – I also think it's pretty symbolic that Hayward, who played for Coach Stevens at Butler, and he never found his niche with Brad Stevens here, and then he became critical of him after he left. And that, to me, is pretty telling because Hayward and Brad Stevens had a pretty tight relationship. It didn't end well, and Stevens really never found the right way to use Gordon Hayward. Now, in all fairness to Brad Stevens, Hayward was hurt so much of his tenure here that it was probably hard to get any momentum, but it doesn't change the fact that Hayward never played to his potential when he was even healthy here.
And also, to give Hayward a little benefit of the doubt, we've seen this season, and I think we may have been ignorant of it the last few seasons because the Celtics have played so well. But this season, it's really obvious since the Celtics are really having trouble. The rotations that Brad Stevens puts in are just mysterious. Like, 1 month, he'll use Aaron Nesmith. He'll play him 30 minutes a game. In another month, he'll play him 4 minutes a game, and he'll have Brett Williams playing 30. Like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know if he's trying to figure out rotations that are working best for the team, but I can tell him right now, none of them that don't have either Tatum or Brown on the floor in the same time are working.
Well, and Cole, I want to speak to that, and this will be one of the rare times I defend Brad Stevens and actually blame Danny Ainge, and that is that when you look at the progression of the roster from 18-19 to the 19-20 season last year, so they lose Horford, Irving, Marcus Morris, Rozier, and Baines, and they replace them essentially with Cantor, Grant Williams, Kemba, and Wanamaker. Now, you could sit there and say to yourself, well, with such losses and poor replacements, you would have expected a regression last season. But because everybody saw Kyrie as such a cancer and Kemba as such a breath of fresh air, I think people didn't think there would be a regression. And guess what? There wasn't. They went 48-24 last year, way better than the year before, 9 less losses, right, in 10 less games, okay? But see, what happened was they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, they lose to Miami, and you're like, wow, they lost all these players, and they still, were able. Why? Because Tatum improved and Jaylen Brown improved, and the chemistry was better last year, and for a lot of reasons. Then in this year, Cole, the only real changes they've made is they removed Cantor and Wanamaker and Hayward, and they replaced them with Thompson, Pritchard, Nesmith, Teague, and Robert Williams, who has been on the team, but he's made a huge impact over the last month and a half. Now, the point I'm making is when you look at the Celtics bench, and this is what I mean by defending Hayward, Grant Williams, even when he does play, we've talked about this on past podcasts, you don't know what you're getting. Semi Ojeleye, Shemi, whatever the heck his name is, you don't know what you're getting out of him. If you play Fortnite with Semi Ojeleye, you may know what you're getting from him.
Semi Ojeleye was good at Fortnite, by the way, so...
Okay. So no matter what bench player you put in, Teague's been obviously a huge disappointment and inconsistent. Pritchard has regressed as the season goes on, and I know he's a rookie. People are going to jump all over him with rookie, but he just looks lost out there at times. His shot's very inconsistent. Nesmith, like you said, Cole, he doesn't play. So frankly, the rotations have been very inconsistent and confusing, and I also think that's because Brad Stevens doesn't know what he's getting out of individual players on a given night.
I don't know. I think that's true. I also just think Brad Stevens is a clueless coach. I think that he gets way too much credit, and I think people were excited when they found out a young coach that coached college before was coming into the Celtics. I think people got hyped up. I think they thought the Celtics would be a future championship team. But right now, they don't look like that. And I think Brad Stevens just does not know what he's doing out there with these players.
Well, here's the thing. People who are Brad Stevens apologists, again, we did our Blame Pie show a few weeks back, and I just want to reiterate, I do not hold the Celtics' failure solely on Brad Stevens. He has been a part of it. There's no question about it. There's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of an ability to motivate and inspire. But Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are poor leaders. They're selfish. And when you look at the three of them, Brad Stevens, Jaylen Brown, and Jayson Tatum, they're all passive. They don't show any emotion. I mean, have you ever watched a Celtics game besides when Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown have a vicious dunk where you've seen them where they look agitated, frustrated, disappointment? I mean, Tatum the other night, he slammed his hand against the basketball support when he missed an easy shot. That's about the extent of what you see. And the key call to me about this Celtics team is even when Tatum or Brown start to show even the slightest bit of frustration or emotion, it's not sustained, just like their effort. So I just look at this team and I'm asking Celtics fans, how do you go from 48-24 last season with the only major loss to your roster being Grant Hayward, who was healthy half the time anyway, and you have Robert Williams emerging. You have a huge improvement in Daniel Tice. You have an improvement in Jaylen Brown. How do you have all these improvements, and yet you're an under 500 team with a significant amount of losses to under 500 teams? I mean, how does that happen?
As much as I love Grant Hayward, Hayward.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's really embarrassing. But I
Grant
guess
Hayward is a great player. I mean, Gordon Hayward's all right, but like Grant Hayward. But I think it's really hard for Brad Stevens. I mean, I know I was just ragging on him, but I also have some. As I was sitting here listening to what you were saying, talking about Grant,
Williams or Hayward?
both.
Okay.
I felt bad for Stevens. Like, I feel like Stevens doesn't have the right mix of players right now, and I think that if they give him what he needs, he can be an amazing coach. But I think he's one of those coaches that if he doesn't have what he needs, he's clueless. But if he has what he needs, he's one of the best coaches in the league.
So, Cole, here's the question. If we asked Celtics fans before this season started, okay, no games have been played, and we said, what do you think their record will be 41 games into the season based on making the Eastern Conference Finals 3 of the last 4 seasons? No one would say 20-21 at this point.
I probably would have said like 28-13 maybe.
Yeah, something along those lines, which would have been consistent with about what their record's been the last couple of years. So at the end of the day, if Greg Popovich was the coach of this team, if Eric Spoelstra was the coach of this team, I don't feel like they'd be 20-21. That doesn't change the fact that they're overrated. It doesn't change the fact that they're not a championship caliber roster. And it also doesn't change the fact that Danny Ainge has done a horrendous job building the bench. And just to make my point, you went from Terry Rozier and Marcus Morris as 2 star bench players. And by the way, Marcus Smart at that time was a bench player as well. So Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris, and Marcus Smart, to now your bench is Grant Williams, Shemi Ojeleye, Robert Williams, Jeff Teague, Peyton Pritchard, and Aaron Nesmith. I mean, that's embarrassing. Come on. How do you take a team, Danny, that's been this good for this many years, and not only has your bench regressed, you haven't landed one good bench shooter, a veteran like a J.J. Redick or somebody like that? I mean, that's embarrassing, Cole.
I honestly think what he's doing is he's taking all these little scrubs that he doesn't know what he's going to get out of them, and he's praying to the Lord that one of them will evolve as a good bench player. And I think he thinks that that good bench player will make up for all the other crap that he puts out there.
All right, Cole, before we get to other NBA news, let's talk about the trade deadline, which is imminently coming up here. So we've heard about Jeremy Grant, who the Pistons say they have no interest in trading. We've heard about Harrison Barnes. We've heard about Nikola Vujovic, Aaron Gordon, these players. And realistically, I think Sacramento says they're not going to trade Harrison Barnes. I personally believe they're posturing, and if the Celtics overwhelm them with an offer, I do think they could get Harrison Barnes. But Cole, honestly, the kind of player I want on this team, the Celtics have so many needs right now. Like, they need a shooter. They need some toughness and intensity, and they need a guy that can defend in the paint. So Aaron Gordon, I think, fits 2 of those, but let's be honest, why is Orlando so willing to move on from Aaron Gordon? He's been a disappointment there. And now he's going to come into this culture of lack of leadership and losing, and all of a sudden Aaron Gordon's going to be a different player?
I don't know about that. I think Aaron Gordon is a little overrated. I don't think that he's the kind of player we need on the Celtics. I think the kind of player we need is a Harrison Barnes or a Jeremy Grant. Aaron Gordon, I think, just needs the ball too much, and I think Jeremy Grant is more like an Al Horford, but he's obviously not built the same, but he still has the same potential as him.
Yeah, and I have to say, last point about the trade deadline, I don't necessarily mind if Danny Ainge saves his big trade exception to the summer if he thinks he can get more for it, because the Celtics aren't winning a championship this year anyway. But I want to see Danny make a couple of moves to add some bodies to this roster. He does have 2 other smaller trade exceptions. And can we please, for the love of God, get Carson Edwards and Tremont Waters and guys that don't belong on an NBA roster off? And can we replace them? Can we move Tristan Thompson? He's not part of the future. And so I want to see even some role players come in that can contribute and infuse some life and energy to this team, even if they save the trade exception of the summer. What are your thoughts, Cole, on that?
I think they need to bring some people in, but I don't think they should waste their money on someone that's not going to really affect the team. I think they need to save the trade exception and wait till someone comes their way that's really going to help improve the Celtics. All right, to move on to our next point, I think it's time for you to go off. I think it's time for all of us for, I'd say, probably another half an hour, 45 minutes. That's how long you could go on for, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. You can go off on LeBron dying in pain.
Wait. You mean the drama queen?
The drama queen.
LeBron, the drama. By the way, before we talk about LeBron, the drama queen, I just want our listeners to know that I now refer to Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker as the little 3. I cannot refer to them as the big 3 anymore. Their new name is the little 3. I just don't, like Aaron Rodgers, the king of the regular season. So I just wanted to put that on record. All right, the drama queen. Cole, this goes back to last year when the Lakers won the championship. And LeBron told us all during the playoffs that whoever wins this year, it will be the most difficult championship in the history of the NBA to overcome because they were in the bubble. Right, because they were in the bubble with no distractions. The camaraderie could be built. Yes, it was so hard, LeBron. We understand. So LeBron has a high ankle sprain. Now the Lakers are upset with Solomon Hill because they think the way he rolled up on LeBron was, bad sportsmanship and so on and so forth. If you haven't watched the LeBron James video of the high ankle sprain with him writhing in pain on the court for what seemed like 5 or 10 minutes, I would have thought he got shot. I would have thought, Gordon Hayward, when he had his ankle turned the other way, showed less frustration and pain than LeBron did. So my point is that LeBron is such a drama queen, and after writhing around on the court for 10 minutes, he gets up and he walks off the court. And now, Cole, here's my big frustration. Now when he comes back in the playoffs with Anthony Davis, all we're going to hear about is I had to work so hard to come back and what a tough road to recovery, and we're going to hear the whole LeBron sob story again. Hey, LeBron, I got one thing to say to you, and that's...
I couldn't agree with anything better you said. So I think LeBron has been like this all his career. I actually saw this funny meme a few weeks ago. It had LeBron early in his career on the Heat, also having a cramp on the court. He's like crying in pain. And then there was this video of some of you Bruins fans may remember a player named Gregory Campbell. Gregory Campbell had his ribs broken on the ice. He had a broken wrist, and he was still skating around, still playing. So that proves that maybe not all basketball players are babies, but definitely LeBron James. And it appears we're having some camera issues, so I apologize for that. But any other thoughts?
No, Cole, 2 last things I want to cover before we wrap up. First, the Houston Rockets. Kudos to the Houston Rockets, executing failure to a T. They've lost 19 in a row, and give credit to new GM Raphael Stone. If you're going to dismantle the team, you might as well be horrible, because being average doesn't get you anywhere. And so, Cole, we want to make a wager. We're talking about that their next loss, I predict they will snap their losing streak against Toronto on March 22nd, but I think you think it's going to be when?
I think it's going to be against the Timberwolves. It's hard to lose to the Timberwolves 2 games in a row. Like that, you got to work at that. Like I think my 4th grade AAU team could actually give the Timberwolves a run for their money. So I think that if the Rockets can play well and John Wall and Oladipo are healthy, I think that's going to be really hard to lose both games to the Timberwolves.
All right, Cole. Well, that's going to do it for the right call. Final thoughts for today. Kudos to the New England Patriots for taking NFL free agency by storm. Super excited about the moves. Can't wait to see the Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry tandem at tight end. And the Patriots made the right call.
I also want to give a shout out to Ohio State and Virginia. I had them both in my championship, so thank you. I appreciate that, and hope you all have a great weekend or a great Sunday night, and we'll see you next time on The Right Call. Thank you.